Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
This is the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com. I'm here with one of my master coaches, Amy Schwartz. How are you, Amy, today?
I'm great, Glenn. How are you?
That's what my niece says. You ask her how she is. She says, I'm great. And I'll go, dude, you don't have to brag.
Does she still say that?
She does. She does. She's 19 years old. She still says it. Okay, great lady. So you wanted to talk a little bit about the definition of success in overcoming overeating. And this conversation stemmed from, we do a quote of the week, and we had some conversation where I put a quote on from a very successful client, and you kind of objected and you said, well, you can't say that unless you know what makes someone very successful as to less successful. And maybe you're going to insult people who think they were more successful than that. And I thought, oh my goodness, we have to do a podcast about this. And I know you took some notes since then. So I'm going to let you take it from here and we can talk it over.
Okay. Well, I have some notes, which I'll go back to in case I miss a few points. And so I hope this won't be too disorganized, but you could fix it up when you're done.
Okay.
So I guess my original point was there could be many different definitions of success, and that can vary from person to person. And even though many of our clients, including myself in the beginning, came in with the major goal being weight loss, and so that's what they're going to say is their measure of success, as you get more into the program, and I'll go into a few reasons for that, there are other things that change, including people's big why. In the beginning, it may start out, I want to lose weight, feel great in my clothes. But then other things happen, like changes in health, changes in other symptoms, changes in mood, changes in confidence, changes in self-identity, and other things that are not directly related to weight or weight loss become more prominent. And then in addition to that, people have different kinds of eating goals. Some people are food restrictors, and so their goal might be to eat more. Or people more like me, hedonistic overeaters, my goal was to become a mindful gourmet.
I love that, by the way. I love that.
I'm pretty much successful at that with occasional spontaneous overeating, but anyway, we can talk about that at another time. And then the identity issues. Well, there's a whole bunch. But before I get into that, I've actually been thinking about something a little deeper, which may be obvious to you, but wasn't obvious to me. And so, sorry if I'm rambling, Glenn.
No, this is great. This is great.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I had a friend, I'll call him a friend, who shall remain nameless, who said to me, so you're going to be a weight loss coach? What kind of a stupid-ass thing is that to do?
I see.
You're a medical doctor. You should be doing something that A, makes more money, B, is more important, quote unquote. And so I've been thinking about that. And, I also had my own feelings for many years when I wanted to lose weight, that is such a superficial goal. Why am I interested in something that's mostly for vanity, and eating is not that important, all that sort of thing. But I've come to realize that it's exactly the opposite. And a lot of people, by the way, say that. As you know, I've successfully conquered everything in my life but this. As if this were like a minor thing that they can't understand why they couldn't overcome this when they've been successful in so many other areas of life, right?
This being food.
This being food, this being eating. like, why can't I overcome this? This should be easy compared to all the other hard things I've done. But as I've thought more about that, I think it's just the opposite. Because eating and food are really basic. So it's one of the basic drives of the body. I mean, it even goes down to like a cellular level. Each one of our cells incorporates the nutrition that we take in through the blood, the lymph, etc. And even thinking back to one-celled organisms, the way they eat is they incorporate the world around them into themselves. So it's like pretty much literally you're becoming what you eat.
Yes.
So it's like really basic on a biochemical and life basis. So it's not just some minor thing that we do, it's actually the basis of our entire existence. That's number one.
That's profound. I think that's very true.
Number two, we talk about squeals, and the squeals are the thoughts that come to us that tempt us to break our rules. And, I know that's the game we're playing. But also, on a more profound level, what I feel like is that the squeals are really sort of the person's basic psychology. And if you can successfully refute a squeal, what you're really doing is saying, I can improve my basic psychology, which may have been beaten down either by the pig, the reptile brain, my family, society, etc. So each squeal that you successfully refute, as you get deeper and deeper into what I call the signature squeal, everybody has one, right? You're actually improving your character and your identity at the same time that you're improving this basic life functioning of incorporating the environment into yourself.
Well, let's just unpack that for a moment because I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. The way that I think about it is that character is what you habitually do at the moment of temptation, and the squeals or excuses that you have for not following your own food rules or justifying overeating something that you really don't want to be overeating, that those squeals make it possible to do something habitually different at the moment of temptation than you really want to do. And so when you say you're intervening in your basic psychology, you're in some ways changing your identity by removing the validity of an excuse that previously seemed reasonable to you. Does that make sense?
Yes, but what I'm saying is that this may have been an excuse for overeating, but it's probably going to be the same excuse that shows up in other areas of your life.
Oh, interesting.
So, for example, if the squeal is, well, everybody else eats that, why can't I? Then there's going to be a general theme of envy, comparing yourself to other people, not having internal motivation. Or if the squeal is, I can't say no to someone in a social setting, that would be rude, then that's a theme of feeling that you have no power in social situations and that other people's needs are more important than yours. Those are just some examples.
You're a deep thinker. I can't argue with those things. That's really good. I agree with you.
Okay, so that was my deep background, and then I was going to go into some of the individual measures.
I would just insert one caveat or caution here.
Okay.
Well, it's probably true that people who feel like they have to eat an indulgent dessert at a restaurant because other people are going to be offended, it's probably true that those people are also people-pleasing in life overall, and it might be a character thing they want to work on.
Well, it might be or it might not be.
Right? It might or might not be, but what's not true is that your pig would like to say that you have to stop people-pleasing as a whole in order to stop overeating in a restaurant environment. And that's not true. You can continue people pleasing in the rest of your life if you really want to, and still intervene and stick to your rule in the restaurant environment. And so it's one of the differences between coaching and treatment. And it's one of the differences between a real informational solution and trying to change a whole person's personality or cure a disorder or disease or a condition. You don't have to fix these things. It will probably help you to stop people pleasing at restaurants, probably help you to see that as possible, and you'll find yourself less likely to people please in the rest of your life. But I don't want people to walk away with the assumption that they have to get into psychotherapy and fix all their people pleasing across their entire character, because you don't. They're just some very practical steps you need to take to stop doing it in a restaurant and to stop overeating. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and certainly we're totally focused, well, almost totally focused on the food behaviors because that's what we're for. But we also tell people that once you've mastered these tools, you can use them in other areas of your life for productivity, goal setting, procrastination, that sort of thing.
100%.
But my point about that, though, Glenn, is that as you do refute those squeals and become feeling stronger and stronger, that your self-confidence improves. And that's kind of basic. We don't tell anyone you have to be more self-confident in order to overcome eating problems, but the fact is that you do. I mean, you do become more self-confident.
When you take control of something that you couldn't previously control, you can't help but feel better about yourself. You can't help but have a higher degree of self-efficacy when you've learned to master something, an impulse that you previously let get the better of you.
I also noticed that people have a lot of different eating and food goals. I mean, obviously, we're all different. And a majority of people I hear say that they want food and eating to fade into the background of their life. They just want to eat for nutrition. And not everybody says that. I mean, for example, I'm one of those. Food is an important pleasure, but I don't want it to make me put on weight or get sick. So I want to have it remain an important pleasure, but one that I have more control over.
I think that the hedonic experience of food is part of what keeps us alive. If food weren't delicious, then we might get more interested in the sunset than meeting our nutritional needs. And so I think that you're really fighting nature to try to make food boring and just eat it like it were fuel as opposed to an enjoyable experience to get excited about. And I mean, this might surprise you because you know that I probably eat less hedonically than you do. I have fewer processed foods in my diet, but the foods that I do eat, man, I love my mealtime. I mean, I sit down with a half a watermelon, you better not get in my way.
Okay.
And I think that's natural. I think it's natural to want to love and savor food, but also, when the mealtime is over, to be able to say, well, that was delicious, but now it's over, and go on and do the rest of your life until it's the time for the next meal.
You made another point, by the way, that was helpful to me because I was thinking that you shouldn't think about food in between meals, but one of your recent quotes of the week was about it's natural to be planning the next meal.
Yeah, planning as opposed to obsessing. It shouldn't feel like an intrusive thought that you can't think about other things. It shouldn't feel like that it's overtaking most of your thought energy and preventing you from accomplishing other things in life. I believe that because food was scarce in our evolutionary history, for the most part, and we had to be ever on the alert for caloric opportunities, that there's a natural planning function that developed in the brain to think about what the next source of calories might be. And I find that it's better to accept that and just channel it into constructive aims rather than try to fight it. Generally speaking, I think that when you can, it's better to go along with evolution than against evolution. Unfortunately, evolution can lead you astray in our modern food environment, because the big food companies are pressing all these buttons that don't really give us the nutrition we need to feel satisfied. But I think where it's possible, if you can be in concert with natural forces, that you'll do better.
Okay.
That was a tangent, but thank you for saying that.
Okay. Well, I had a bunch of examples of things that people could use as their measures of success.
Sure.
So I could go through those and you can comment on any or...
Please. Amy, you're doing terrific. I'm treating you like a colleague here, just so you know.
Oh, as opposed to what?
as opposed to a student or
okay.
supervisee or something like that. I'm trying to say I'm impressed with your thinking and what you put together.
All right. So the three things we measure in our module 1 and 5, they're valid measures of success. One of them is weight, which is important to some people. Actually, 4 things we measure. Another one is frequency of binging and overeating. Another one that is important to people is the food obsession. You actually have a score for that. But the one that you don't talk about, but we actually measure, is the happiness level. I don't think we stress that enough, that the pig tries to make you think that binging and overeating are fun and make you happy. But it's actually the opposite. As people's binging and overeating goes down, their happiness level usually goes up.
Yes, and that's true. We almost never talk about that, and we don't present the evidence in the program itself. That's true.
It might be worth mentioning that.
It would. No, we should get it tallied and put that together. Happiness score generally does go up as binging and overeating goes down. And food obsession. As food obsession goes down, people's happiness scores go up. And the reason I put it in as an assessment in week 1 and week 5 was so that people could see that it changed.
Then the other thing I learned about that is you might superficially think, well, of course you're happier if you lose weight or if you're not binging and overeating as much, but sometimes it's also food choices. Because I know I had a lot of foods that the pig liked me to eat that try to make me think they made me feel better, and they actually made me feel worse. So a lot of the processed foods, or as you say, the ones with excitotoxins and whatnot, actually over time drop your mood rather than elevate your mood, like any substance of abuse.
A simple version of this, if you don't want to join our program, is just set an alarm to ask yourself how happy you feel 2 hours after you eat something. See what impact, by the time the food is becoming you and the taste sensation is over, how does it actually influence your happiness? And you need hundreds of observations to really figure that out, because there are a lot of other factors that are in play. But it's a worthwhile exercise.
Okay, another measure of success is following your rules. And we don't recommend counting streaks. I know Yvonne lately has talked about counting the total days that you're on plan versus not on plan. But here is where my original comment about levels of success came in, because some rules are harder to follow than others. And as people either have one simple rule or add rules, they understand that, well, this one was easy, this one was harder. So if, and I'm not saying we should, but if we were measuring levels of success by compliance with rules, we'd have to have like a rating of how difficult that rule is.
Yeah, and give people a handicap score.
Right, yeah.
I'm curious what you've found. I found that 2 of the harder rules to start with are, I'll have only 3 meals a day with nothing in between. Lots of people get there, but to start with, it's been a little hard. And I'll never eat after 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock or whatever the time limit is for them to finish. Those are slightly more advanced rules to be able to comply with, whereas I'll never go back for seconds, or always take a deep breath before I begin eating. Those are some of the easier rules to begin with. So do you have any experience or thoughts about what rules people do better with?
Well, I mean, my own experience, the most challenging rule for me was I'll never again eat after dinner. And I never even got to that rule in the first 2 years because I was trying to first control specific foods. I'll never eat X again. I'll never eat Y. I'll only eat Z on, holidays or whatever. So it took me a while to get to this behavior rule, which I found really the most difficult to overcome.
I had to write a whole book about that, how to overcome nighttime overeating, because there are a series of factors that influence it. It's not as simple as you might seem, but it's very doable. We want people to start with one simple rule that they're going to win at for a week or 2 before they take on more difficult rules. Just food for thought. You can still start with it if you want to, but it's just food for thought.
Well, my actual very first rule was I'll never again eat chocolate. In the back of my mind, and I even might have written this in some versions of my rules, I've got a list of, the thousands of rules and revisions I ever had. Originally, it was until I lose all the weight I want to lose, and then I can eat chocolate again. Or I can only eat chocolate on my birthday and blah, blah, X 300 days a year and not these other 65 days a year or whatever. And when I first put that rule in, then Big Pig was like, oh, okay, no chocolate, but there are all these other yummy desserts without chocolate. So then I started eating, caramel apples and nuts, and I won't go into the list of things. So then I had to have a rule about sugary desserts, and on and on. So I played with that for a few years until I finally got to the no eating after dinner. That was the hardest one, but it took a while to work up to it. So I think you may even have to go through those other things. And then you probably also have to go through this idea of, I mean, we tell people, but it's hard not to do it. People's initial rules are often designed for weight loss. And if they're designed for weight loss, the less stated or the unconscious thing behind that is, oh, and therefore, once I lose the weight, I don't have to follow this rule anymore.
Right.
So that was another thing that was a challenge, to come up with the idea that, oh, no, I don't want a rule for weight loss. I want, number one, a rule of how I actually want to live my life with food. And number two, I want a rule that will stop what's putting the weight on me, not just how to diet better. So to stop the overeating habits and behaviors while still enjoying, like you say about individual things, what role do you want food to play in your life?
Food plans evolve over the first 6 months to a year. They evolve quite a bit. And that's okay because you learn a lot as you're going along. And just so people know, it doesn't take years to fix your food.
Right. I was one of the slow ones. You have a whole podcast on how long it took me. So, take heart, you turtles. Here's somebody else's.
Amy, I'm treating you as a colleague.
Right. I understand, but I'm just pointing that out in case anyone wants to go back and listen to that one.
But just so people know, you also wound up in a more powerful place than most people do. And you've been able to sustain it with less effort than most people have to make. And I think that's what you were describing in a previous podcast, right?
Right, slow and steady. And then once I got there, I felt like, how come everyone else is ahead of me? But then I finally got there and nobody's passing me so lately.
Good, which is why we made you a master coach.
Thank you.
What other measures of success did you have?
Okay, so I have a bunch of others. This one we've heard a lot and you talk about, control over food impulses. But one that we don't talk a lot about, and that I've had some of my clients recently talking about, is an increase in feeling of choice. So, a lot of people will blame external circumstances or other things on their weight gain. Oh, I had a bad marriage. Oh, my job is stressful, or whatever.
My brother brought me those chocolate chip muffins. He knows I can't resist them.
Right. I mean, I had one myself. Oh, one of my former bosses brought in Easter egg colored M&M peanuts, and she knows I can't resist those. Yeah, exactly. So one measure of success for some people is an improvement. You talk about helplessness and powerlessness, but the other side of that is feeling of choice. I chose to eat those things, and I can choose to not eat those things. Or I chose to take this job, I can choose to quit this job. And I have a choice over everything I do. It does lead to increased happiness as well, to feel like this was my choice and I can make a different choice now.
Beautiful. Anytime you feel like you're more of the master of your own environment and you can determine your own fate as opposed to drifting on the ocean wherever the current takes you, there's more of a sense of mastery and achievement and confidence and happiness in the world. And so, yes, a sense of choice is an element of success too. That's really good.
So now I'm going to sort of split hairs here. There's a sense of choice, but then there's a different one about where people fall on the spectrum of spontaneity versus planning. And so for some people, a success is being able to plan ahead, do meal prep, have everything in Tupperware. By the way, I wasn't sure they were still making Tupperware. I had to look that up.
Are they?
Apparently, yes. You can still buy Tupperware.
I think I bought a whole bunch last week.
Okay, then you knew.
I didn't really look at the brand. It just these nice
okay.
containers for my food. But,
well, anyway, so for some people, more planning and food prep is a measure of success, whereas for some other people, being able to eat more spontaneously will be a success. So people who were rigid eaters or restrictors, who now have the guidelines or the rules in place that safeguard them, and that now feel more freedom between the lines. Now I can eat whatever I want, whenever I want, as long as I follow my rules.
I know exactly what you mean, and that's very true. Very true.
Another thing can be a variety of foods. Some people, in order to stay on a diet or to control their calories, you'll eat the same thing every day. And then they may develop the freedom to add more foods. Especially people who, maybe like I did, try to restrict foods instead of changing the behaviors. And then say, okay, well, I can't have chocolate. Now I can't have sugar. Now I can't have nuts. Now I can't have cheese. Now I can't have dairy. What's left? But then when you switch to 3 meals and nothing in between and nothing after dinner, but within those meals I can have whatever I want, all of a sudden now you have more variety of foods you can eat. Assuming there aren't those foods that are what I call the feed-forward foods that make you want to keep eating.
Yeah, good. I agree.
Snacking and grazing. For some people, eliminating snacking and grazing and just eating 3 meals is a success. For other people, being able to add snacks and graze and taste foods within boundaries while they're cooking is a new freedom that they didn't have before.
Well, I mean, really what you're describing is that autonomy is important not only in the development of your own food plan, but in the assessment of your own success. Nobody can really define what success is for you. I mean, your doctor can say certain blood levels and a certain BMI or something like that, but really, there are so many different dimensions of success. You have to decide exactly what you want and go for it and define it for yourself. These are really good observations. And a lot of this is something that you won't know until you're a month or two into the program and you really see the results that it can deliver. You probably won't know that until you're there. So it's very interesting, Amy. Do you have more?
Yeah, you have a task, by the way, just to comment on that. You have a module, I forget which one, a module and a task on identity. Part of that is, what are your values? What are your character? What role do you want food to play in your life? And how does that fit in with your values? But then you have this thing called I can't remember. It's like canvas, where you say, if I'm this kind of a person, what are all the behaviors a person like this would display? And that's sort of a perfect place to go through what would be the measures of success.
Oh, I see.
I eat a meal, but I don't go back for seconds. Or I choose the healthiest item on the menu, but still one that I know I will enjoy.
This is a part of the program which is not in the book. These are the advanced modules that I added after the book. And it might be a little hard to understand for the prospects that are listening, not having actually taken the program. I'll leave it here anyway so they can have a little taste of it. But I just want to say, if you don't understand what we're talking about, there's a reason for it.
All right. Another measure of success can be the healthfulness of your diet. I mean, a lot of people have an idea of which foods are going to be more healthy and less healthy, but that doesn't mean they eat those. So one measure can be what proportion of your diet has become healthier.
Oh, I see. Like if you're starting your day with a couple of green smoothies, even if you haven't changed a lot else about your diet, you have increased the proportion of healthy food in your diet. According to me, according to someone else.
It might be something different, right?
Yeah, right.
So everyone's going to have their own definition of what a healthy diet is, and as the closer you get to that, that's a possible measure of success. Social situations. Some people have gotten into the habit of avoiding social situations because they feel like they can't control themselves, or there'll be foods there that they want to eat, don't want to eat. So that's another potential measure of success, is the capacity to resume going to social situations and not feel out of control with the food.
Yes, and not feel panicked about it before and after.
And the increase in freedom to be able to say no, which is one of those things that can permeate into other areas of your life. Once you learn to say no to one thing, you can learn to say no to other things.
Beautiful. You really put some thought into this.
Well, I'd sent a long list. Let me see. Meal frequency. People who went from, like me, what you call OBAD to 3 meals a day.
One binge a day, yeah.
Yeah.
Some people feel like that's a success, and some people feel it's a success in the other direction.
That's right. So either way, change in frequency to go from more to fewer or fewer to more. I used to feel like the only meal that counted was dinner. And so I would want to eat as little as possible at every other meal. I don't know how I got to feel that way, but anyway, now I can enjoy every meal. And it doesn't have to be 2 tiny meals and 1 giant meal.
Lovely. Anything else, Amy?
I think I got through my list. Let me just take a quick look and see if health issues. There's certain foods that give people pain, arthritis, indigestion. So a measure of success can be, I don't have that pain anymore. I don't have those headaches. My hands don't hurt. My digestion is more regular. And again, that's based on food choices, not necessarily weight loss.
Really appreciate you doing this, Amy. This is great. Like, not good, but great. A lot of food for thought for people.
And the last 2, change in attitude about food, whatever that is. Food is something I have to restrict because I have no control over it, to food is something I can enjoy but still have control over. And change in attitude about goals and life. So many of us, and I know I was one of those people, oh, her grave is going to say she died it all her life and finally achieved her goal weight, like I didn't have any other goals.
Right.
So to be able to have other goals in life and to, I don't know if this is in your book or just in your modules, but that you can have other goals in life and you don't have to have other goals in life either. You can just enjoy your life as the human animal that you are.
You don't necessarily have to have a purpose. We'll show you how to find a purpose, but you don't necessarily have to have one. Amy, this is really, really great. I really appreciate the depth of thinking you put into this and observations and specific examples. And I know it's going to help a lot of people who are trying to escape the diet mentality with all the focus on the scale. Is there anything that I should have asked you or that you want to be sure to talk about that we didn't talk about today?
There's nothing wrong with the scale, and you can weigh yourself or you don't have to weigh yourself.
Right. There are a million ways to succeed besides the scale, but it's also just a number and information can be power.
And there's nothing wrong with wanting to lose weight, and there's nothing wrong with it as a goal either.
Right. We're just really accepting free to be you and me kind of people, aren't we?
Well, I don't know about me, but you are. I said that wrong.
You actually are. You're a very non-judgmental person.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.